Good morning, students, and welcome to another video lecture on the political economy of India, the Nehruvian model to the new economic policy. And in this lecture, we shall be dealing with India's political economy right from 1947 to 1990s when the new economic reforms were introduced. The focus would be on understanding the Nehruvian model of development. A political economy is a relationship between economics, law, and politics. It tells us how the political institutions function in relation to the economic model in place. In analysis, how it analyzes how the public policy is created and how it is implemented. On the eve of 15th of August 1947, when India became independent, it had enormous problems to deal with, right from tackling the poverty, illiteracy, social inequality, and injustice to developing the industries and infrastructure. Economic growth was extremely important to ensure a minimum standard of living for all in the country. The formulation and implementation of policies greatly depends upon the model of the development that a country chooses. At the time of independence, there were three broad options for the Indian political class to choose from. When it came to choosing India's economic model, the first choice they had was of the capitalistic industrialization with minimum state control or state support or state intervention. The second option was going to be the socialistic industrialization model with the state guidance. And the third model was on the lines of the Gandhian philosophy of Sarvodaya. Now, there were mixed feelings about the models of economic development, but India's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru's preferences stressed on following. He wanted to maintain the national sovereignty, the superiority of the state in the economic development, and the need for India's poor to share in the fruits of development. Nehru, as the Prime Minister, rejected the capitalistic development model and the idea of free competition and minimum role of state. It was inspired by the ideology of socialism. So Nehru completely disregarded the idea of capitalism. He said that India is a very different economy. We cannot compare ourselves to the West, and we cannot thus implement the liberal market policies because we have a lot of poverty which West doesn't have. So we have to take care of those poor people. So capitalistic economy is not an option. He was inspired by the idea of socialism and the developmental achievements that the USSR had made at that time. So he was really in awe of how USSR had handled their situation, and he felt that India's situation was close to that. However, he never defined what socialism as a way USSR defined. So for him, socialism's definition was never what the Soviet Union said. He never wanted to bring about some radical changes using socialism as a model. It just meant more equality in all the spheres, better opportunity for all, social justice, and equitable distribution of wealth in a society. He wanted the state to act as a major organ in introducing the modern science technology in the country to end socio-economic disparities. And Nehru wanted to solve country's problems through a very scientific approach. He believed that the capitalistic model cannot ensure full growth of a society, and Nehru described the vision for India as a democratic socialism. So, a mix of democratic liberal values and at the same time the socialism's ideology. So, it was called democratic socialism, and under the leadership of the first Prime Minister, India adopted a mixed economy model of development. The mixed economy model of development means an economy where the private sector and the public sector both play an important role and coexist. This model would be a combination of capitalism and socialism, and this unique blended model is now known as the Nehruvian model of development. The choice of this model affected India's path to development for next 4 decades up to 1990s. Let's look at some features of the Nehruvian model of development. The first is that the Nehruvian model is a state led model and the state regulated model of an economy. Nehru wanted to avoid the concentration of wealth in few hands, and he wanted to ensure better distribution of the country's resources so that nothing gets monopolized by the private sector. The government was to play a very proactive role in the economy, and by controlling the financial systems like the insurance and the banking industry, the state can ensure investment in the social sectors like education and health. The state will promote infrastructure facilities like power, irrigation, roads, railways, transports, etc. This will help to improve the national as well as the per capita income in the country. So these are the areas like education or health sector. These are the areas where Nehru did not want to trust the private sector. It did not want these areas to be profit oriented or a means to earn income for someone. These areas, these industries of education and health, according to Nehru, should be developed to serve the country, and hence public sector was best suited to do so. Moving on to the second feature, Nehruvian model supports the coexistence of private and public sector with a dominant role to be played by the public sector. So he has no problem in private sector thriving, but the public sector will have more regulation and more control over the private sector also. The government clearly demarcated the areas in which the private sector can work and which the public sector will work. So this division was specified in the industrial policy resolution. The industries which were of the basic importance, like defense, heavy industry, water, transport, energy, were all kept under the regulation of the state and the supervision of the state. Private sector was to be the supplement to all the efforts that the government was making. So the private sector was to supplement the efforts of the public sector at all the points, and the private sector investment and productions were regulated by the state according to the planned priorities of the state. The Industrial Development and Regulation Act was also enacted at this time to regulate the private sector. The third feature that we're talking about is planning for a rapid industrial and agricultural growth. Now, a mixed economy means a planned economy. The public and the private sectors were to operate accordingly, according to the areas that were specifically demarcated for them. So they had to remain in those boundaries and then they had to work. Nehru had to set up a planning commission to help assess the country's needs of material capital and human resource and to formulate the economic plans for a more inclusive growth. Planning Commission started preparing 5 years plan to improve the conditions of agriculture as well as to ensure rapid industrial growth. Every 5 year plan had a clear agenda which was laid out, and accordingly strategies were made to achieve those goals in next 5 years. So the second 5 year plan was carved out by the Professor P.C. Melanobis. He was an advisor to the Prime Minister Nehru and was made responsible for introducing a clear strategy of development based on the Soviet Union's experience. Aim was to make India an independent country and reduce its dependence for imports of the heavy machinery. Because heavy machinery is the foundation of industrialization. You cannot be an industrialized economy unless and until you do not have heavy machinery. And if you go on to import this heavy machinery from foreign countries, you'll have to pay a lot of foreign exchange to them. This will harm your balance of payment, your country's fiscal picture. Your country's balance of payment would be in crisis. But at the same time, the small and cottage industries were also to be encouraged. So the second 5 year plan was a very balanced plan. It also aimed at making our country industrialized and independent in the sphere of manufacturing. At the same time, it also encouraged small and independent cottage industries to flourish. The Nehruvian model applied institutional approach to the agriculture. Emphasis was laid on bringing about land reforms and farm cooperatives. Investments were made in the field of irrigation, research, and development. The model used fiscal policy to achieve the social objectives. Now, by fiscal policy, we mean the policy of taxation and public expenditure. And the two main social objectives that the government wanted to achieve were the removal of inequality of income, wealth, and the establishment of socialistic society based on equality and justice. Progressive income tax would also ensure that the people who earned more paid more taxes, and this will help the redistribution of wealth in the country. Public money was then used to promote the welfare of the lower income groups and the weaker sections in the society. Investments were made on health and sanitization, water supply, cheap housing, special welfare programs for Dalits and tribals. Let us take a look at the factors that were responsible for adopting a mixed economy and a democratic socialistic kind of model. So first reason is the India's experience with the colonial regime. The colonial rule, which had led to a lot of exploitation in the India's economic model, was a huge impact, was a huge dent that was left in India's memory. And the government of India did not want to give the power to control the economic resources again in the hands of private sector. Second reason was India's socio-economic problems. India had to deal with problems like poverty, unemployment. We've discussed this before. Also, illiteracy. There was huge population to feed. There were regional imbalances. Everything, all these problems were, they started immediately after independence. And the democratic socialism seemed to be the best option to tackle all these problems. State wanted to take the responsibility of dealing with the social problems on itself. So Nehru did not want to trust any private sector, any private player in improving the situation of the socio and cultural problems of this country, and he wanted to take that responsibility on the government itself. India at this point, post independence, was aiming to build a modern economy. But this would require an adequate physical infrastructure, including power, road, railways, ports, telecommunications. Private sector was not willing to make such heavy investments. Thus, public sector had to step in. Constituent Assembly was very skeptical about the nature of a free economy, that if it could cater to the needs of the Indian society. The era of the Cold War at the global level too influenced the choices of the Indians. Eco-political systems, as India did not want to align with the socialist and the capitalistic ideology. So India always wanted to remain non-aligned. So that is why to choose a strategy which was not completely liberal and democratic and free market and laissez-faire, and which was not completely communist and socialist, was very important. So we found democratic socialism to be a middle path, somewhere between the two ideologies. And this would also help India to maintain its identity, a separate identity, apart from aligning from US and USSR. Taking a look at India's political economy right from 1947 to 1965. Okay, so India made some remarkable achievements in this period of nearly 15 to 17 years. India's GNP and the gross national product grew up to 4% per annum between 1951 to 1965, constantly and consistently, except for a year, 1965, it saw a war as well as a drought. This rate of growth was 4 times more than what India had achieved in the last 50 years under British rule. Another important achievement was the rapid rise in their savings and the rates of investment. The fourth five-year plan estimated the savings and investments in the Indian economy to be 15.5% of the national income. Looking at the improvement made in the field of agriculture, land reforms were also initiated after the independence. This led to a massive network for agricultural extension and the community development at the grassroots level, the village level. Large public investments were made to irrigation, power, agricultural research, which led to improvement in the condition of the agricultural sector. But there is no doubt that the industry grew more rapidly than agriculture. Manufacturing sector was always growing more rapidly as compared to the agriculture sector. The compounded rate was about 7% per annum for the industries to grow in 1951 to 65. The basic consumer good industries and the heavy industries also grew at a faster rate. This growth went a long way in reducing India's dependence on the advanced countries for basic goods and even the capital equipments. High priority was given to the development of infrastructure, including health, transport, education, communication during each of the first five-year plans. 26% of the total planned expenditure went on all these developmental infrastructural improvements. Massive investments were made in the field of science and technology. During the first plan itself, high-powered national laboratories and institutions were set up by the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research for conducting fundamental and applied researches in the science and technology. In 1948, the Atomic Energy Commission was set up, laying foundations of India's nuclear science efforts. But we have some scholars like Atul Kohli who argue that Nehru's emphasis on heavy industry led to neglecting the agriculture sector, and they argue that agriculture had more than 60% of the population relying on it, dependent on it, and should have been given more importance at that time. Moving on, to India's political economy from 65 to 1980s. Now, Nehru's death in 64 left a massive vacuum in the Indian political scenario, but Lal Bahadur Shastri succeeded him as the next Prime Minister of India. Lal Bahadur Shastri brought about some changes in the Nehruvian model of economic development. He gave more priority to agriculture than to industries. He laid the foundation of Green Revolution, but very unfortunately, he died in 1966. Indira Gandhi then took over as the position of Prime Minister and served India as the PM till 1984, the year in which she got assassinated. But as we all know, after that, in 1960, before that, while Indira Gandhi came into power immediately, in 1967 itself, Congress started losing its dominant position in the Indian political scenarios. We know how its power was lost in so many states. Its position at the center also became weak with every forthcoming election. Congress had to form alliance with the Communist Party and the regional parties to maintain its power. These alliances started affecting the economic policies of the government, and to accommodate the demands of various alliance partners, the policy had to be changed every now and then. Now, it was only in 1971 that Indira Gandhi got a landslide victory when she campaigned with a strong ideological goal of removing poverty. Her slogan was Garibi Hatao. So this was the political scenario at this time. Now let us look at how was our economy, the economic sector, performing at this point of time. The adoption of green revolution strategy worked in India's favor completely. With introduction of high yield variety seeds, fertilizers, irrigation facility, and other inputs resulted in creating food security and also the poverty reduction. Between just 2 to 3 years, from 68 to 1971, the food grain production rose by 35%. Major private commercial banks were nationalized in 1969. The Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act severely restricted the activities of large private enterprises. Insurance sector was nationalized in 1972 and the coal industry was nationalized in 1973. In 1973, the Foreign Exchange Regulation Act was also passed, which put numerous restrictions on the foreign investment and functioning of the foreign companies in India. India became one of the most difficult destinations to invest for the foreigners. Government during this time also made efforts to turn the sick units into the profitable ones, and companies, rather than just shutting them down, it tried to so government was trying to improve the balance sheet of its sick units, of the units which were no more profitable. So government didn't want to shut them down and allow the private sector to enter that space. Government rather tried to revive those public units so that the private sector is not needed to enter in those areas, in those spheres. While the Janata Party was in power from 1977 to 79, the economic policy of India was based on three pillars: labor, small scale industries, and decentralization in the field of economics. Janata government was short lived, but their policies of pro farmer procurement prices and subsidies initiated during their period influenced India for a very long period of time. Now, let us evaluate to the best of our understanding these economic policy steps that were taken. The most important development was introducing of the Green Revolution, which led to improvement in the food production, provided food security to India, and also improved farmers' income. Government made solid efforts after mid 60s to improve our balance of payment situation and to reduce our dependence on imports for the critical inputs like oil. Now, this pulled India out of the economic crisis. This achievement must be reviewed in the light of the internal as well as external political scenario, the crisis that India was facing. So, everything that we read about the Indian economy, what all changes were made in the Indian economy, you have to understand that when these changes were being made, there was a lot of political turmoil everywhere. So, we'll read about that now. Okay. India was to tackle the burden of nearly 10 million refugees from the East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh, who were taking shelter in India. Then India had to deal with the 1971 war with Pakistan. Then there were two droughts in 1972 and the other was in 1974. There was an oil shock in 1973, leading to the high rise of oil prices in the international market. There was also another shock in the oil market when the crude prices completely doubled. All these adverse situations led to decline in the agriculture and industrial growth rates. These years were marked as the stagnant years in India's growth. Let's look at the last phase of the active Nehruvian policy from 1980s to 91. As we saw, the decade before 1980s was a very stagnant growth year. India saw the low rates of investment and savings here. And this was also the time when other Asian countries like South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore were showcasing improvement in their growth levels by opening up their economies to the private players. Lack of the government support for business, labor activism, inefficiency of public sector, decline in the public investments, especially in the infrastructure sectors, were identified as some of the reasons for India's slow growth. These problems led to Indian government taking a very strong stance on the policy making. Nationalistic model of development of Nehruvian era was no longer proving to be very beneficial for India's political economy. All the subsequent prime ministers, right from Indira Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi to Vishwanath Pratap Singh to Chandrasekhar, all continue to deregulate the private sector now. Rajiv Gandhi was the most proactive about promoting the private sector. Some important advisors with Rajiv Gandhi's government, like the L.K. Jha, Manmohan Singh, Montek Singh, and Alu Alia, they all played a very, very important role and decisive role in the policy shift. And they later contributed to even framing of the 1991, the new economic policy for the country. Now, let's look at some of the highlights of our economic policy from 1980s to 1990s, nearly a decade. First of all, the Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act, which is also popularly known as the MRTP Act, was earlier introduced to limit the growth of large business houses. It was now changed. The license restrictions were now removed, and the big businesses were allowed to expand in the core industries, as the chemicals, drugs, and ceramics and cements. 30 industries and 82 pharmaceutical products were delicensed by Rajiv Gandhi's government. Private sector was encouraged to raise the funds directly from the people to finance new investments. India also entered a loan agreement with IMF for nearly $5 billion in 1981. This was to be used to harness India's oil and natural reserves by developing the publicly owned Oil and Natural Gas Commission. These funds contributed to India's energy security as the ratio of oil imports to the domestic production was reduced from 60-40 to 30-70 within a period of 5 years. So earlier, 60% of the oil was imported and 40% was produced internally. And after taking this loan and after making improvements in our infrastructure, we were able to produce 70% of the petrol, the crude oil within the country, and just 30% of the requirement was being imported. Government also collaborated with Suzuki Corporation of Japan to encourage the investments in the Indian automobile sector. Allowances were given for the expansion of this sector. Successful production of Maruti Suzuki cars in India was a landmark achievement in improving the efficiency and reliability of Indian cars. Government was very proactive in making substantial investments in the computer and in the electronic industry as well. Supply side support was also provided to the industry of IT, the industry so that the industry remains competitive, and information technology parks were founded. Collaborations with the foreign companies in the field of science and technology was encouraged. Major Indian IT companies like Wipro and Infosys, they matured during this period. So this was the time when the Indian IT companies, which are so famous now and employ thousands of people, were born. And the foreign companies like Texas Instruments and Microsoft, they even established their own bases in India. So let's try and evaluate these policies. So first of all, it cannot be denied that Mrs. Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi played a very, very dominant role during this entire decade of 80s. This was the time when India was pulled out of the stagnant growth rate of 3% or so and was now achieving the growth rate of 15.8% on an average. The new growth strategies that were adopted by the government led to the higher investments flowing into the country, and this improved India's growth rate, especially in the industrial and the service sector. So service sector was a new sector which was founded now. We also have critiques of these policies, and they argued that all these reforms were useful only for the big corporation and they did not make much difference or did not help much to the small businesses. Now, this was the economic policy and the political policy right from independence to 1990s when the economic reforms were introduced. So the economic reforms would be covered in the next video lecture. For now, let's just sum up what we have studied so far in the past few slides that you've seen. We looked at what was India's political economic situation immediately after independence. It was completely stagnant. There was widespread poverty. Nehru, being the first Prime Minister of independent India, had huge responsibility on his shoulders to solve these problems. He wanted a model that was a mix of socialism and democratic values of liberalism. Thus, he adopted democratic socialism for India's economy. All right. Public investment was thus encouraged in all the important sectors of the economy, right from the heavy industry to nuclear sectors to science and technology. India also laid the foundation of the research and development in the atomic energy sector. India was successful in making a transition from a colonial economy to more independent country. Nehruvian era, it created basic physical and human infrastructure, which was the precondition for the independent modern India that we live in now. Later on, the Green Revolution changed the scenes of the agriculture with high yield variety seeds, better equipment and infrastructure. Farming sector became more profitable, income of the farmers improved considerably. This also made India very self-sufficient in the food grains. Now, when the economy was doing well, on the other hand, now there were certain long-term structural weaknesses being built up. The fiscal pressures on India were high, its revenue was less, the public expenditure was much more than the government was earning. The country was also witnessing a decline in the foreign exchange level. Import levels were growing. So we were importing more, exporting less, exports were sluggish. This was the time when the government was pushed to encourage the private sector to expand and fill the vacuum that could not be filled by the public sector alone. So this was when the foundation of the economic reforms were being laid, which we will be discussing in the next lecture. But for this lecture, we will stop here. Thank you so much and all the very best. I hope most of the doubts about the economic and political policy were clear. Please go through this video lecture and supplement this with your idle notes. Thank you.